Do you ever wake up in the morning and say to yourself, what in the world is going on? The whole place went to hell in a handbag and you don't even own a handbag. I'm telling you, if you want Xanax through your hearing aids, then this is the thing you should do. You should listen to the Randi Lupo show because she covers everything from comedians to writers and everything in between. She's entertaining and informative at the same time. She's everything that you wished your mother-in-law would be, and she isn't. But Randi, she was born in Brooklyn, New York, a different Brooklyn than most, a 2 bears over Brooklyn. Randi brings his unique outlook to the show, and Lord knows we do need a different outlook. So now, put down your lattes, because you're about to see and hear something you never heard before, and that's our host, Randi Lupo.
Hi, everyone. Today we're talking to author Mike Keren. He wrote 4 Funerals, No Marriage. Welcome.
Thank you, Randi. Thank you for having me.
I'm really so happy to be doing this. I'm so intrigued by your book. Can I ask you what made you write this? This is your memoir. What prompted you to write this?
So it's a bit of a longer story, but I'll try to make it short. So the memoir is about caregiving to my parents and to my in-laws, and my mom was the last of my parents to die. And the day after she died, I felt freed up in some ways, and I picked up the phone and I called a comedy school and started taking lessons to do stand-up comedy. And I did that for a couple of years and found that, I was pushing 50. It was a very young person's game, I felt. And I was discouraged by all the homophobia and racism and sexism that I encountered in comedy. So I stopped doing that and decided that I was going to take some writing classes. And I had just finished treatment for prostate cancer. And I thought I was going to write about my experiences with prostate cancer. But when I sat down in class and started writing this memoir about my parents, spilled out. And I was able to channel a lot of my comedy stuff into it and things like that. So as I like to say, 4 Funerals, No Marriage is a funny book about really tragic, sad things.
I would so agree. And you draw us in from the get-go. Mm-hmm. Chapter 1, you lay everything out. You don't hold back. And you really get to know your story. You feel like you get to know where your sense of humor came from, how your interactions with the family, all happening mostly through hospitals and treatment centers, and everything in between. It's you get to see the dynamic between you and your parents, Tom and his parents, and it was amazing. I mean, it makes sense why you signed up for the comedy class. Your comedy shines through in the writing. Right. I was laughing when obviously it's very upsetting, a lot of it, but and the uncomfortableness of being with your parents as their caregiver, and they're just ripping clothes off of them, and you're seeing things that normally you wouldn't really want to be seeing. Right.
So, you're referencing the start of the book, and it starts on a day that my parents, who I love very much but could be very difficult, had decided they wanted to leave their retirement home in North Carolina, where they were pretty unhappy, and move back to New Jersey. And they came up, and within 2 days my father had a stroke, and 2 days later my mother had a heart attack. And so I have them both in the hospital at the same time. And meanwhile, I'm also starting a new job and a whole new career at the time. And in this one day when my mother got hospitalized, I had what I call the triple play, where I saw my mother's breast, my mother's vagina, and my father's penis all on the same day. And I felt like Oedipus. I wanted to poke my eyes out,
And I can't blame. And I just want to tell you, I'm so happy you put up the boundary. Did not put your father's penis cream on. That was very good. I was so happy that you did. Well, that was like a relief to me that you told him no.
Right. And I tried to capture their personalities, my personality, and also some of the history. I mean, that scene with my dad wanting me to put cream on his penis, it mirrored a situation 30 years before when my grandmother was dying, and she was asking my father for some uncomfortable things as well. So, and he set that boundary not as nicely as I did, or without as much humor as I tried to do. But.
Exactly. Right. You are also a psychologist for everyone to know. So, and I had I had remembered talking to you a number of years ago, and I was interested, and I said, Mike, what brought you into the field? What made you want to be a therapist? And you told me I want to fix my mother. And
That's why a lot of therapists become therapists. This idea that we could fix our mothers. And when I realized I couldn't, I lost a little bit of interest in it. I mean, I refound it and things, but yeah, I mean, I think my mom was a depressed and somewhat embittered person, and I inherited a lot of that from her. So I thought, I mean, I don't know there was a conscious decision. I've learned that later in my own therapy. That was kind of what I was looking to do, but yeah, so.
And even though it was like a challenging relationship, you and her were very close.
Throughout her life, throughout my life, I was. I laugh sometimes. I say I was the daughter my mother always wanted.
You were her favorite. I know you're not allowed to talk.
No.
It seemed to me that you were
absolutely
her favorite.
was my mother's favorite. My older brother, may he rest in peace, was probably my dad's favorite. And I have a little brother who, was the compensatory favorite. Like he was 7 years later. I think they felt like, oops. So they loved him too much sometimes, I think,
Right.
because of that. But yeah, I was definitely my mom's favorite. For most of my life, we were tight. We speak several times a week. There were periods of time when I'd get upset with her and stuff like that. And very often she would, I think she worked to keep my father and I at odds at times. And I found that out in a really difficult way. I was at an uncle's 45th birthday or something like that. And I was in graduate school and poor as can be. My student loans were delayed. I was like borrowing from Peter to pay Paul all the time. And at the end of the party, my father said, "Do you need any money?" And my mother, every time my mother would send me money, she'd be like, "Don't tell your father I'm doing this," right? And I said, "Yeah, $20 will get me through the week." And he crumpled a bill and handed it to me. I put it in my pocket. And I get home and I found out he handed me like 4 20s.
Oh.
Right? And it suddenly dawned on me like, yeah, you know what? It's not Dad that's having a hard time with this. It's Mom and stuff. And I was pretty angry with her for a while over that, but we got past that. And, but yeah, definitely. And it wasn't, for the most part, it wasn't hard to take care of her. She didn't put up a lot of fights and, and stuff like that. When we were caregiving, Tom, my husband's father, he was a little bit more resistant and things like that. And I talk to a lot of caregivers now whose, families like put up all kinds of fights and don't want to do things. And, my mom just went along with it, which made life a lot easier.
Absolutely. And what put you in the caregiving role? Being that you're not an only child, you
Right.
do have to, you had 2 siblings at that point.
So, yeah, sometimes I forget I'm not an only child. But so, as I said, my parents had been living in North Carolina for about 10, 12 years. They'd moved down when the grandkids were starting school, and now the oldest one was getting ready to graduate. The next one was moving into high school, and they didn't need him as much anymore, and they had never really liked where they lived.
Yeah.
But my mom had heart disease, and she had her first heart attack probably 18 years before she passed. And she did really well for about 5 years, and then she got fed up with her rehab routine, and she didn't like the equipment that they had, so she stopped going, and her health just declined over the next 13 years or so. And when they were in North Carolina, I never heard of it. They would be like, "Oh, we didn't tell you because we didn't want you to worry," or whatever, But, as soon as it was done, they would call me and go, "We didn't want you to worry, but, Mom had another heart attack," or, "Mom got another stent."
And of course, all you did was worry.
Right. It's like, now I have to worry all the time. And when they came up for, this house hunting trip, when they both got sick, my mom had an angioplasty, and the doctor says to me, "Your mom is a really sick woman." And I was like, "Really?" And I said, and he shows me this picture of my mom's heart. And at that point, she had like 12 stents, which is a lot.
And you didn't know.
I had no idea, right, that it was this extensive and stuff. So over lunch that day, I'm talking to my older brother, and I'm like, "Do you know how sick she is? Did you?" He says, No. And I said, "Didn't you ever ask?" And he'd be like, "No, why would I talk to her doctors?" Now, my dad was alive and he was the primary caregiver, but
Yeah.
my father had no background, no anything. Like he could have used some support. And Stuart at that point, when Mom had her first heart attack, I think was still in college or was just getting out, and he was working for a company where he traveled a lot and things like that. And I always let Stuart off the hook. Stuart was my baby brother,
Of course,
and
the babies always gets off.
So
Gets off the hook.
now he may say it differently, but I think I do. And I think because it was here and they weren't, it made sense. And at that point, my father really could know at first they were both in the hospital at the same time. My father was fighting for his own health, and so we had to step up. And is she in the picture? Oh, okay.
We like dogs.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, you're stealing the show from Daddy, aren't you? Yeah.
You can't compete with dogs or kids, right?
So, and and I think I've always been a natural caregiver. I mean, I think it's partly why I became a psychologist as well. I came out in college, it was 1980. AIDS was just making its appearance in the gay community. I took care of and buried a lot of friends in those first couple of years after I got out of school. And so I knew how to do it. And so when the time came, it just felt like this was natural. I would ask my brothers when I needed help. And sometimes they would say, oh, whatever you think is best, right? And that's a piece that would drive me crazy, because I wouldn't ask you if I didn't want an opinion, right? It's like, I'm here by myself. If I'm asking, it's because I want to know what the rest of you think, right? But for the most part, like if I said, Tom and I really want to go away, would one of you come up and, stay with Mom and Dad or stay with Mom? They would say yes. At one point, my little brother pushed back a little bit and said, how come you always get to say when it's going to be? And I'd be like, well, because I'm here all the time, and I'm the one who needs the break. But, if he had said, well, that time doesn't work, but we can do this time or whatever, I think we were very flexible with each other and stuff like that.
Would have been, we'll do it that weekend instead of that weekend.
So,
I totally get that. There were chapters in the book that are just like, they're really gut-wrenching, where your parents both needed care, physical care, and nobody was to be found, and and your reactions to things and how you handled it, and like, I feel like anyone who reads the book is going to be able to, they're going to be able to put themselves in your shoes. Either they were already in your shoes, and if not, if they were lucky enough not to have to do this, they're going to understand, because we see your frustration and how your love for your parents, and that you would do anything for them, and regardless of what it was, regardless of you even addressed that you start channeling Shirley MacLaine as her role as Aurora. Was that in terms of endearment?
In terms of endearment, yeah. It's multiple occasions in the book. She takes over. It's like, it's as much her story. So, we'll see. Maybe someday she'll see the book and get a kick out of it. So.
But I mean, your level of anger and how you advocate for your parents. It's, I mean, I have to be honest. When I saw that, it's a little morbid, but I said, "Oh my goodness!" When it gets to be the end of my life, I hope I have a caretaker like you that's going to advocate for me and be there for me like you were. Right.
Not to be a salesman, but anybody who's worried about whether their kids will know how to take care of them, I think this is the perfect book for them to give their kids for Christmas this year. With a little note that says, just in case you're wondering how to take care of me.
That's not a bad idea. I should give this to my daughters,
So, one of the marketing reps I once talked to about the book said exactly that, this is a book that people will identify with you, the ones that pick it up. And then they're going to buy it and give it to their siblings, and they're going to give it to their children for that exact reason, right? Because of the humor, I think it makes it more palatable right? And one of the things that I think this book is great for
Makes it very palatable,
Right.
because some of these, but this is very difficult times that you had. And what was this, in a matter of how many years did
So it basically was over 2.5 years. So
this? And you lost 4 people in 2.5 years?
my father-in-law, who was the first loss that I cover in the book, that was several years before, and it kind of set us up for the roles we would play. But my mother-in-law, my mother, and my father went in a 2.5-year period. My mother-in-law and my mom in a 7-month period. Right, and what's really there are moments that certain things are forecast, they're going to happen, things like that around it. So I don't want to give away too much. I want people to want to read it.
Of course.
So, but I think the book, one of the things that I like to talk about in terms of the book is having those hard conversations, right, about how you want your end of life, how you want. What you want to have done with your remains, right? My father, agreed to be cremated because my mom wanted to be cremated. My mom wanted her ashes in New York Harbor. He never told us what to do with them, right? So they basically sat in the trunk of the car for a while. And I know people are like, yeah, my husband's in my closet, my father's, in the attic.
I could so relate to this.
Right?
I could so relate to this.
So, and I think if you have these conversations, my dad, they had living wills and that kind of stuff, and my father never wanted to be intubated. He never wanted life support, and then he was being prepped for a test, and he had a massive heart attack, and they told me the only way they could save him was to intubate him, and he accepted it because I think he was scared to death at that moment.
Understandable.
Right.
I think we all would at that moment.
So then he ends up on life support, and so he's got tubes down his throat, and I bought him a little board to write to us on, and the doctor walked in one day when he was like writing to me, and it's like, he should be saving his energy to heal, and then put my father in an induced coma without like giving us a chance to say goodbye or whatever. So I think the other conversation really is issues with the healthcare system today, right? And everybody's focused on how we pay for healthcare, but I think how we pay for healthcare is really impacting how we deliver it. And I think hospitals are understaffed. I think doctors have lost the humanity that they, like I grew up on Marcus Welby, right? Marcus Welby made house calls, right? Nobody makes house calls anymore, right? No. Not even if your next door neighbor's a doctor, he won't come over, because he can't bill for that.
Right. And malpractice. And
right, exactly. But, like, there's a team of nurses, and you go to get help for your loved one, and they're like, oh, he's not my patient, talk to so-and-so, or talk to so-and-so. And one of the hospitals had signs everywhere, patient's comfort is everybody's business, right? Well, I walk in one day and find my father sitting, he had soiled himself, and the food service guy comes to bring him food. And I'm like, wait, he's sitting in shit. You think he should eat with? Shit ain't my job.
Were you ready to wring his neck?
Well, I just looked at him and I said, have you seen the signs in the hallway that say, patient comfort is everybody's business? So, that was a place where Aurora was about to make an appearance and things. And
I honestly, I loved when Aurora came out.
Right.
I think everyone will love, because, Aurora was the champion. She got things done.
Right.
She got things done for her loved ones. That was number one priority.
Right.
Because if you didn't advocate for them, no one else would have. And what I got from that, they felt powerless. They kept saying to you, Mike, please be nice, because I'm stuck here and I don't want them to take it out. And they were like almost afraid, and like it really gave you like a perspective of what also, like, it showed both sides, what it's like to be the caregiver wanting excellent care for your loved ones versus being the patient in the bed and being afraid of asking or wanting too much because there may be some retaliation or maybe, not being treated as well.
I raised that with like the nursing supervisors on the unit sometimes, and they're like, that's a legitimate fear, like the nurses are people and they sometimes act out. But, I made a point of getting to know the nurse managers, the charge nurses, the social workers on the unit, And they were my right hands, you know.
I mean, most nurses in general, I mean, I admire them.
Right.
I mean, it's a calling. But like you said, like any profession, you're
Right.
going to have the great ones, you're going to have the not so great ones, and the ones in between. Did you find the great ones? Did you manage to find a lot of great ones?
The best nursing staff was in the hospice, where my mother and mother-in-law both passed. They were so there and so attuned to everybody's needs. In the hospital, I thought it was a little bit harder. And it's funny, I have a friend who, she's older now and retired a long time, but she was a nurse for years and years, and started in the day when nurses wore white starch uniforms and caps, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of have this theory that when nurses stopped wearing caps, they became a little less professional than they had been. You know, and I've worked with a lot of loving and caring nurses and things, but in general, I don't see them like as Florence Nightingale anymore.
But do you think it's because they're so overworked?
I think it's because they're overworked, but I think it's also like a uniform reminds you of your profession sometimes. And I just wonder if we went back to that kind of thing, you
That's
know,
interesting.
instead of like wearing teddy bear scrubs or whatever, you know, the stuff that they wear, you know. So, but
So I need to ask you, when is your book coming out? Because I know that people are going to love it.
Right.
I honestly, I can't put it down. I really can't put it down. It is the kind of book that just grabs you. And I mean, there's nights I'm up till 3 a.m. reading it. Because
sorry if I'm the cause of your insomnia.
not at all.
So the actual release book of the date is October 5th of 2021. I don't know when this is going to hit the airs, but it's available now for pre-order at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, all the booksellers online and things like that.
And do you have a website?
I do. It's MikeKeren.com, MikeKeren.com. And on the website there are links to that. There are my schedule of places where I'll be reading from the book, a little video from my old days when I did comedy.
I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, and you know, a little bit about myself, a little more of the story of the book and things like that. And as I've been doing a lot of these sort of interviews and podcasts and webcasts and things, and as those get published, I'll have links to those. And so if you're interested, take a look at the website.
I definitely am interested, and
Yeah.
I look forward to coming to your book readings as well.
Yeah, good.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was so interesting, and I just want to let everyone know that we're going to be doing part 2, where Mike Keren is going to be reading an excerpt from his book, 4 Funerals, No Marriage.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the Randy Lupo Show. Thanks for checking out the show. Be sure to follow Randy on Twitter at Randy Lupo. Thanks to Broadband Box Office and VK Media. Have a great evening.